Have you ever heard the story of a man so strong that even lions couldn't stop him? A story where courage, power, and faith collide in an epic battle against the forces of evil? Well, buckle up because today we're diving into the incredible life of Samson, a hero chosen by God to save Israel from their enemies. His story is filled with wild adventures, moments of bravery, and lessons that still speak to us today. It all began when the Israelites were under the rule and oppression of the Philistines. Things were tough, and they had forgotten God, doing what was evil in his sight. As a result, the Lord delivered them into the hands of the Philistines for 40 years. In the midst of this, a miracle was about to unfold. Judges 13 verse 1 says, "Again the Israelites did evil in the eyes of the Lord, and for 40 years he gave them into the hands of the Philistines." And that's when the story of Samson begins. The Bible introduces us to a man named Manoah from Zorah, of the family of the Danites. His wife had been unable to have children, but God had a plan. An angel of the Lord appeared to Manoah's wife and told her something incredible. "You shall conceive and bear a son. This son will deliver Israel from the Philistines." Judges 13 verse 3. Can you imagine what it must have been like to hear that? This child was destined for greatness, but there was a special condition attached to his life. God's plan for him was not ordinary at all. The angel told Manoah's wife that their son would be a Nazirite, a person dedicated to God, set apart for a special purpose. Nazirites had a unique vow, as described in Numbers 6:1-5. They had to abstain from wine, avoid anything unclean, and let their hair grow long. No cutting the hair. Not only would their son follow this vow, but the angel also told Manoah's wife to follow it even while she was pregnant with him. This wasn't just any ordinary pregnancy. This child was going to be different from the start. God's hand was already on him before he was even born. After hearing the angel's message, Manoah's wife ran to her husband with the news. She said, "The man who came to me said I'm going to have a son, and he must be dedicated to God from the womb." Manoah, of course, was confused and wanted more clarification. So, he prayed to God, asking for the angel to visit them again and explain things further. And God listened. The angel returned, but this time, Manoah wasn't there. His wife ran to find him. And when she did, she said, "The man who spoke to me before is here again." Manoah quickly followed her, and when he met the angel, he asked, "Are you the one who spoke to my wife?" The angel confirmed, "Yes, I am." Then Manoah, still confused, asked for more details about what he should do with the boy. The angel repeated the instructions given to Manoah's wife, emphasizing that they should be careful in following the Nazirite vow. Manoah, thinking the angel was just a man sent by God, offered to prepare a meal for him, but the angel refused, saying it would be more fitting to offer a burnt offering to the Lord. So, Manoah did as instructed, and when he placed the offering on the altar, something amazing happened. The angel ascended in the flames to heaven. Can you imagine how it must have felt to witness that? Manoah and his wife were struck with awe, and Manoah was terrified, thinking, "We're going to die. We've seen God." But his wife reassured him, saying, "If God wanted to kill us, he wouldn't have accepted our offering or told us all these things." And just like that, their son was born. They named him Samson, and the child grew strong and blessed by God. The Spirit of the Lord began to stir in him, preparing him for the mighty work ahead. But here's where the story takes an interesting twist. Despite being chosen by God and set apart for a special mission, Samson made some questionable decisions. He had the strength of a lion, but his choices didn't always reflect that strength. One day, Samson went down to Timnah and saw a young Philistine woman. He immediately wanted to marry her, and even though his parents warned him against marrying outside of God's people, Samson insisted. But little did they know, this was all part of God's plan. God was setting the stage for a confrontation with the Philistines. On his way to Timnah, Samson was attacked by a young lion. But, empowered by God's Spirit, He tore the lion apart with his bare hands. Isn't that incredible? A grown man without any weapon, defeating a wild beast with ease. This was just a taste of the power God had given him. Later, when Samson returned to the spot where the lion had attacked him, he found that bees had made a hive in the lion's carcass, and he took some honey from it. This moment was just one of many that displayed God's power working through Samson in the most unusual ways. But Samson did not tell his father or his mother what he had done. Then he went down and talked with the woman, and he liked her. At a feast for his engagement, Samson decided to pose a riddle to the Philistine guests. He said, "Out of the eater, something to eat. Out of the strong, something sweet." He offered them a challenge. If they could solve the riddle in 7 days, he would give them 30 changes of clothes, but if they couldn't, they would have to give him the same. For 3 days, the Philistines were stumped, unable to solve the riddle. Frustrated, they threatened Samson's fiancée and her family, demanding she get the answer from him. Eventually, after much pressure, she convinced Samson to reveal the answer, and he told her. The Philistines, now smug, came back with the answer. But Samson, knowing they had tricked his fiancée, was furious, empowered by the Spirit of God once again. Samson took vengeance by killing 30 Philistines and giving their clothes to those who had solved the riddle. But the drama didn't stop there. Samson had returned home, but he was alone. His wife was not with him. Some time later, he caused more destruction to the Philistines. When he decided to visit his wife, her father refused to let him enter her room. Shockingly, he had given her away to another man, assuming that Samson no longer wanted her. Enraged, Samson unleashed his wrath in an extraordinary way. He captured 300 foxes, tied their tails together in pairs, fastened torches to them, lit the torches, and released them into the Philistine fields. The destruction was massive, burning their crops, vineyards, and olive groves. Judges 15 verses 1-5. During the wheat harvest, Samson took a young goat and went to visit his wife. He said, "I will go to my wife's room," but her father refused him entry. "I was so sure you hated her," the father said, "so I gave her to your companion. Isn't her younger sister more attractive? Take her instead." Samson, furious, declared, "This time I have a right to get even with the Philistines. I will really harm them." Then he captured the 300 foxes, tied their tails, set them on fire, and sent them running through the Philistine fields, burning their standing grain, vineyards, and olive groves. Judges 15 verses 1-5. The Philistines retaliated in a brutal way. They killed Samson's wife and her father. But Samson did not let this go unpunished. In his fury, he attacked them with great force and killed many of them. Afterward, he withdrew to a cave at the rock of Etam. Judges 15 verses 6-8. When the Philistines came looking for him, they laid siege to a village in Judah, seeking revenge. The men of Judah, afraid of the Philistines, decided to hand Samson over to them. They sent 3,000 men to capture him. Can you believe it? Instead of standing with Samson, the man God had sent to deliver them, they chose to turn him in. Judges 15 verses 12-13. They told him, "We have come to tie you up and hand you over to the Philistines." Samson replied, "Swear to me that you will not kill me yourselves." They agreed, saying, "We will only bind you and hand you over. We will not kill you." Then they tied him with 2 new ropes and led him out of the cave. Judges 15 verses 12-13. But when the Philistines saw Samson bound and approaching, they cheered in victory. However, at that very moment, the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon Samson. The ropes on his arms became like burnt flax and fell off. The Philistines had no idea what they were in for. Samson found a fresh jawbone of a donkey, picked it up, and struck down 1,000 men. Judges 15 verses 14-15. As he approached Lehi, the Philistines came toward him, shouting, but the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon him. The ropes on his arms became like charred flax, and the bindings dropped from his hands. Finding a fresh donkey's jawbone, he grabbed it and struck down 1,000 men. Judges 15 verses 14 to 15. After this mighty victory, Samson was exhausted and extremely thirsty. He cried out to the Lord, saying, "You have given your servant this great victory. Must I now die of thirst and fall into the hands of the uncircumcised?" In his mercy, God opened a hollow place in Lehi, and water gushed out. Samson drank, regained his strength, and was revived. That place became known as En-Hakkore, meaning spring of the one who cried out. Samson then led Israel for 20 years. Judges 15 verses 18 to 20. Throughout the Old Testament, the Spirit of the Lord would descend upon people for specific moments of divine intervention. But today, as believers, we carry the Spirit of the Lord within us. Ephesians 1 verses 13 to 14. In him you also, having heard the word of truth, the gospel of your salvation, and having believed in him, were sealed with the promised Holy Spirit, who is a deposit guaranteeing our inheritance until the redemption of those who are God's possession, to the praise of his glory. Ephesians 1 verses 13 to 14. Samson's journey took a dark turn when he went to Gaza. There, he saw a prostitute and spent the night with her. This was a reflection of Israel's own struggles, as they had turned away from God and worshiped idols. Judges 2 verse 17. The Philistines in Gaza heard that Samson was there, and they thought they had finally trapped him. They surrounded the city and waited to kill him at dawn. But Samson had other plans. At midnight he got up, grabbed the city gate doors along with their posts, tore them out, and carried them to the top of the mountain overlooking Hebron. Can you imagine the sheer strength needed to do that? Judges 16 verses 1 to 4. It was during this season of his life that Samson fell in love with a woman named Delilah. Though her true allegiance was unclear, she was loyal to the Philistines and their money. The Philistine leaders approached her with a tempting offer. If she could lure Samson into revealing the secret of his strength, they would reward her with a great sum of silver. Judges 16 verse 5. Delilah tried multiple times to extract the secret from Samson, but each time he tricked her. However, she was relentless. Day after day, she nagged and pressured him until he was utterly exhausted. Delilah used the same tactic that Samson's bride had once used to betray him to the Philistines. She pleaded with him, saying, "How can you say, 'I love you,' when your heart is not with me?" Judges 16 verses 6 to 14. Desperate to uncover the secret of his strength, she persistently questioned him. Samson, however, toyed with her, offering false answers. "If anyone ties me with 7 fresh bowstrings that have not been dried, I will become as weak as any other man," he said. The Philistines, eager to seize him, brought the fresh bowstrings, and Delilah tied him up while hidden men waited in ambush. Then she shouted, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." But Samson snapped the bowstrings like a thread touched by fire. His strength remained a mystery. Delilah, frustrated, confronted him again. "You have made a fool of me. Tell me how you can be bound." Samson replied, "If anyone ties me with new ropes that have never been used, I will become as weak as any other man." Once again, Delilah bound him and called out, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." But he broke the ropes as if they were mere threads. She persisted, wearing him down. "Tell me how you can be bound." This time, Samson said, "If you weave the 7 locks of my hair into the loom and tighten it with a pin, I will become as weak as any other man." While he slept, Delilah wove his hair into the loom. Then she called out, "Samson, the Philistines are upon you." But he awoke and pulled the pin, loom, and fabric free. Despite his games, Delilah was relentless. She nagged him day after day until he was exhausted. Finally, he gave in and revealed the truth. "No razor has ever been used on my head," Samson confessed, "because I have been a Nazirite dedicated to God from my mother's womb. If my head is shaved, my strength will leave me, and I will become as weak as any other man." Judges 16 verses 15 to 17. Delilah wasted no time. While Samson slept on her lap, she summoned a man to shave off his hair. The Philistine rulers waited in the shadows, silver in hand, rewarding her betrayal. When Samson awoke, he thought, "I will go out as before and shake myself free." But he did not know that the Lord had left him. The Philistines seized him, gouged out his eyes, and took him to Gaza, binding him with bronze shackles. They put him to work grinding grain in prison. But his hair began to grow again. Judges 16 verses 18 to 22. God was not finished with Samson. His hair was a sign, not just of returning strength, but of repentance and restoration. Sometimes, God must take us to the lowest point before we realize our need for Him. The Philistine leaders gathered for a grand festival, offering a sacrifice to their god Dagon. They rejoiced, believing their God had delivered Samson into their hands. As they celebrated, they called for Samson, mocking him and making him their entertainment. They led him to the temple and placed him between the pillars. There, Samson saw his opportunity. "Sovereign Lord, remember me," Samson prayed. "Please, God, strengthen me just once more, so that with one blow I may get revenge on the Philistines for my 2 eyes." Judges 16 verses 23 to 28. With all his might, he pushed against the pillars. The temple collapsed, crushing the Philistine rulers and everyone inside. In his final act, Samson killed more enemies that day than in his entire lifetime. Though he had failed, though he had been blinded, God still used him for His divine purpose. Even in our weakness, God is strong. Samson's story is a powerful reminder that no matter how far we fall, God's mercy can restore us. Hebrews 11 verses 32 to 33 lists Samson among the heroes of faith, proving that despite his imperfections, he believed in God's power. Let us, too, trust in God. Let us surrender our lives to His purpose and seek His strength in our weakness. If you found this story inspiring, consider subscribing to our channel so you don't miss any upcoming videos. Let's continue growing in faith together. Thank you, and may God bless you.